In this lesson, we'll begin adding some behavior to our classes. Like the class definition itself, methods in Objective-C are always defined in two parts. We first define a prototype definition in the class interface, and then provide a concrete implementation in the implementation file. There are two different types of methods we can define in Objective-C: class methods and instance methods. Class methods operate on the class itself and not a particular instance, so they're not able to manipulate the state of a particular instance, but instead provide class-level behavior. For instance, NSObject, the base class in Objective-C, defines an alloc method that is used to allocate memory whenever we're creating a new object instance. We also have instance methods, and this is what we write most frequently, as these methods operate on the state of a particular instance and provide its core behavior. The basic syntax for creating both types is really the same. The one exception is that class methods always begin with a plus sign, and instance methods always begin with a minus sign. So they're easy to differentiate when you're looking at the class documentation. Let's create an instance method on album called markAsFavorite. So this will be an instance method, so we'll start with a minus sign. The method's not going to return anything, so we'll say it simply returns void, and that will be wrapped in parentheses. And then we specify the name markAsFavorite. And we'll follow that up with a semicolon. So this is simply the prototype definition, no implementation here. But we'll highlight this and copy it. So Command-C to copy. And we'll switch over to our implementation. And I'll paste this in. Xcode does not yet have the ability to automate this process for us, so we do a little copy-paste to make this happen. Just a simple body. So the method body starts with an opening brace and ends with a closing brace. Now, a fairly uninteresting implementation of this method, but this is a perfectly valid implementation at this point. And I can actually hit Command-B to compile, and you'll see everything compiles just fine. Now, our markAsFavorite method didn't need to return anything, but of course methods also need to be able to return values. So let's add a method to album to return its name. So I'll switch back over to the header, and we'll create another instance method, so it'll start with a minus sign. But this time we're going to actually return a value. So we'll wrap this value in parentheses again, but this time we're going to return an NSString. And this is the default string type that we have available in Objective-C. We'll talk a lot more about this class as the course goes on. So I'll say NSString. And I need to give that an asterisk. And the reason I'm doing that is because this is a pointer type. Now, you may have heard that pointers are a complex and somewhat scary topic to deal with. And although pointers certainly do have their share of complexities, what's really important to know when you get started with Objective-C is that all of your object types are going to be pointer types and will have that asterisk next to them, whereas your simple primitive types will be non-pointer types. And believe it or not, armed with that little bit of information about pointers can take you a long way to getting started with Objective-C. The convention used in Objective-C to return the value of a particular property or attribute is to provide a method with the same name as the attribute itself. So I'll highlight this and copy it once again. I'm going to switch back over to my album class, but instead of using the mouse to toggle back and forth, I'll hold down Control Command up arrow. This is a little quicker way for me to jump back and forth between the header and the implementation. So I'll paste this in and give this a method body. Now this time you can see I'm getting a little compiler warning. If I highlight that, you can see control reaches end of non-void function. Since this method returns a valid type, I need to return something. In this case, I'm going to just say return nil. So I just want to return an undefined type. And this is fine in this particular example. We'll flesh this out as we go along. Hit save to save those, and compile once again, and everything looks good. Methods can also take parameters. We defined a method to get the album name, so we may also want to create a method to set its name. So I'll create a method called setName, and this will return void. Since I'm passing a parameter, I'll need to specify a colon here and say what type I'm passing. So this will be a string, and it's a pointer type, and give it the name name. So that's a valid definition of my set name. I will copy that, switch back over to my implementation file, paste it in, and just give it an empty method body. So that's how we can specify a method that takes a parameter. Now that works fine for a method that takes a single argument, but methods can also take multiple arguments. Now, a unique and somewhat odd aspect of Objective-C is that parameters are always named. So for instance, if I wanted to add a method to artist to be able to order a particular album of a particular quantity, I would do so as follows. So I'll switch over to my artist.h file, and I want to add a method called orderAlbumQuantity. So this will be an instance method, and I'll call this orderAlbum. This will take an argument of album, pointer type, but it also needs to take a quantity. So I'll type quantity, and the type for this I'll use is NSU integer. This is just a simple integer type. This is a non-object type. So that's the way we can pass multiple arguments to a method. Now the one complaint here is that it doesn't know anything about this album class. So I can fix that in one of two ways. I can either import the album header itself. So I can say import album. So that will make that symbol known to the artist class. I can also use this feature called @class. And this will just make this symbol known to this class without pulling in all of the details. In this case, that's perfectly fine. So I'll just use this @class. If I compile, well, it's going to tell me I've got an incomplete implementation. So I need to highlight this, copy it, switch over to my artist implementation file, and just give this an empty method body. Compile once again, and the build succeeded. You should now have a good understanding of the way methods are defined in the header and implementation files. I'll see you in the next lesson, and we'll continue to build these out further.